Shalom Aleichem. We're doing a Sicha Perek Aleph Avos, and it's a Sicha based on Shamai. So let's learn a little bit about who Shamai was. Shamai and Hillel, as it says in Perek Avos, were the last group of Zugim, the last group of partners, in which one was the Nasi, Hillel came from Shevet Yehuda, and Shamai was the Rosh Beis. And since Achik Knesset Hagdolah, which was the beginning of Bayis Sheni, till Shamai and Hillel, there was the system of Zugis, which lasted a few hundred years. Shamai and Hillel live approximately about 100 years before the destruction of Churban Abayis. So in English dates, it's just before the Common Era. During their time is Herdus and his people that took after him, a very difficult time for Yisrael. Herdus, as we know, Herod, caused an incredible amount of pain to Am Yisrael and murder, etc. And Shammai and Hillel led the people in their time. Famous story about Hillel, how he got to the position, but it's not a story about Hillel. We're not focusing on Hillel, we're focusing on Shammai. The Rabbi said in the Sicha, based on the Kudik Torah, that the name Shamai is Al Kain Nikda Shamai Kinyan Shamud Azal V'Sam Derech. It's called Asamer Chaysav. He took his life very seriously. Everything was Shamai, like an estimator. Everything was thought through. It was Mesuder, and it was, in other words, he took his Yiddishkeit very, very serious. A Yiddach upshots and upwegins and drachim. A person has to weigh their ways. Shammai, as we know, is a more stronger personality. In the Sicha comes out certain elements of it that it's more soft, but in general, as we know, that Shammai was the stronger one. It says in the Gemara in Beitza regarding his year Shemayim that he would eat the whole week for Shabbos. If he found an animal, he would say this is for Shabbos. And he found another animal which is nicer, he would leave the second one and have the first one for Shabbos. Basically, he would take the new one and then eat the previous one now during the week. We don't see a lot of things about Shammai in Gemara. We learn a lot about Beis Shammai, which is his study house and his Talmidim and his system of learning. And it's a Sicha that we learned recently in Project of the Sichas about a Beis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer following the Beis Shammai model. But we don't learn so much about him. What we learn is, for example, in Maseches Sukkah, we learn that the daughter-in-law of Shammai HaZaken had a baby, and he made sure that there was a schach on top of the baby's crib or cot. Another story in Tosefta that Shammai HaZaken wanted to feed his kids. He had to feed his kids, but he wanted to feed with them only with one hand. And they made a gzera on him. In other words, they told him he has to do it with two hands. In other words, you have to do it the whole way. If that's the right thing to feed your kid, you could do it with two ways. But other than that, we don't know a lot about Shammai. We know him as Shammai HaZaken. And in Chassidus, we learn that the share of neshama of Shammai is from the Gvura, and not just regular Gvura, but Gvura Sachayis. The Rebbe says, and Sichas Kodesh Lamed Beis, Gvura could come from strength. So the Chesed actually is going in strength, and that means that Shammai actually comes from a Gvura which is higher than Chesed. There's negative Gvura, the Gvura that we have to break, the 5 Gvuras that we break when we break the matzah, the 5 pieces. But then there's positive Gvura, and that's where Shammai comes from. But that's where Mashiach comes. It will be like Shammai because that's the true level of Chesed. Chaim Shalom, and should the Niske v'Nicha right away to see BS HaMashiach, and then we're going to be paskin like Shammai.